Hello, everyone. From coast to coast is underway. As of last week, we had delivered close to 1 million doses total to the provinces and territories. There's still a lot of work to do, but these shipments are already bringing relief and hope to communities across the country. Every day, more vulnerable people in long-term care homes and more healthcare workers are getting vaccinated. And in Indigenous and Northern communities too, the immunization campaign is ongoing. Last week on Vancouver Island, 600 doses arrived for the Cowichan tribes. Within just 2 days, every single one had been administered. Over the weekend, 9 Cree communities in northern Quebec received boxes of doses. And in the coastal Inuit community of Nain, Nunatsiavut, Canadian Rangers were deployed and did great work to support the vaccination efforts. This is what teamwork looks like. To everyone who's part of this effort, thank you. When we work towards a common goal, we get results for all Canadians. Now, even with this good news, the situation is still critical. Our fight is not over. That's why we have the plan Canada needs to get you and your family vaccinated as soon as possible and to deal with any roadblocks that come up in our way. For example, Pfizer's global supply issues are not ideal, but that's why we were so ambitious in the large numbers of contracts we signed and doses we secured. I can tell you that Minister Anand is in contact with the company every day. Remember, this situation with the Pfizer delay is temporary. Our vaccination objectives for the first quarter of the year, January to March, are not changing. And the total number of doses committed to us is still the same, with every Canadian who wants to get vaccinated able to get vaccinated by September. Quand je dis que tout le monde doit faire sa part, je m'adresse aussi aux voyageurs. Ce n'est pas le temps de voyager à l'étranger. Si vous aviez prévu de quitter le pays, s'il vous plaît, au nom de tous les Canadiens, annulez. Ça ne vaut pas la peine d'attraper la COVID-19 et de la ramener au Canada pour un voyage dans le sud ou ailleurs. Comme vous le savez, les voyageurs doivent faire une quarantaine obligatoire à leur retour et les conséquences sont très sévères pour ceux qui ne le respectent pas. Quant aux nouveaux variants de ce virus, que ce soit en Angleterre, au Brésil ou en Afrique du Sud, on suit la situation de très près. Mais une chose est certaine, avec ces nouvelles mutations, les circonstances pourraient changer très rapidement. Alors, encore, on demande aux Canadiens de rester ici au pays. Surtout que de jour au jour, les ministres continuent d'évaluer les différents enjeux et on pourrait imposer de nouvelles mesures sans préavis, dépendamment de la situation. Plus que jamais pendant la pandémie, nos choix personnels ont des conséquences sur la sécurité et la santé des autres. Continuons à être vigilants. Il faut continuer de s'entraider. Quand on ne respecte pas les consignes, ce sont les travailleurs de la santé et les plus vulnérables qu'on met à risque. Mais souvenez-vous, la situation est temporaire. Les vaccins sont en train d'être déployés. Il faut tenir bon pour les prochains mois, parce que tout comme vous, j'ai bien hâte à l'arrivée du printemps. It is absolutely critical that everyone keeps doing their part to slow the spread of COVID-19. We owe it to ourselves, to our families, and to everyone around us. Vaccines are coming. In a few months, spring will be here. So now is not the time to abandon our efforts. I think of the tragic and unacceptable situation in long-term care facilities in Ontario and across the country. Our parents and grandparents deserve better. Our nurses deserve better. So to the residents, we are doing everything we can to get you your vaccine as quickly as possible. And to the workers, I know your families are worried as you are worried about them. I know that your kids are afraid to lose you every time you go to work and you're afraid of bringing home the virus. So if you haven't already received it, we're getting you your vaccine as soon as possible. So thank you for everything that you do. Your dedication, your commitment to Canadians impresses us all. There's a lot more work to be done, but we're making important progress. Last Friday, Mayor Watson here in Ottawa said that all long-term care homes in the city have finished their first round of vaccination. In Quebec, 3/4 of long-term care home residents have had their first shot. More doses are coming, and we won't stop until everyone is safe. Alors que des mesures plus strictes pour freiner le virus ont été annoncées par plusieurs provinces dans les dernières semaines, beaucoup de gens continuent à s'inquiéter pour leur emploi et pour l'avenir. Notre gouvernement a mis des programmes en place pour vous aider et nous allons être là pour vous tout aussi longtemps qu'il faudra. Pendant la retraite du Conseil des ministres, l'équipe s'est penchée sur notre stratégie pour continuer de soutenir les familles, les travailleurs et les entreprises. Pour nous dresser un portrait économique national et global, nous avons reçu la présentation de 2 experts, Kevin Milligan de UBC et Francis Donald de Manulife. Et nous avons aussi parlé de la relance. As Canada recovers from this global crisis, we want to make sure that everyone, every worker, parent, and young person lands back on their feet. To help do that, part of our strategy is ensuring that Canada becomes the global clean tech leader, and that Canadian workers be at the forefront of that vision. On that note, it's great to see that Unifor members ratified their agreement with GM Canada to build battery electric commercial vans here in Canada. Including this agreement, deals that have been announced over the past few months have secured nearly $6 billion of investments in the Canadian automotive sector. These deals are protecting and creating good middle-class jobs, and they're creating new opportunities right across the country. With these investments, Canadian automotive workers and businesses will continue to lead in growing markets for efficient, electrified, and smart vehicles. Like we said when we presented our climate plan, a healthy environment and a healthy economy, clean technology presents enormous opportunities for economic growth and jobs. When a project is good for workers, for growing the middle class, and for protecting the environment, everybody wins. There's still a lot of work to be done to rebuild a stronger, cleaner, and more inclusive economy, and announcements like these are exactly what we need to get there. Before we end today, I'd like to say a few words about this week's inauguration in the United States. Tomorrow, Canadians and people around the world will be watching the swearing-in of President-elect Biden and Vice President-elect Harris. This moment will mark a new chapter in the incredible relationship between our two countries. I also want to address reports surrounding the Keystone XL project. Yesterday, I spoke with our ambassador, Kirsten Hillman. We've had a clear and consistent position supporting this project for years. Our government is making sure that Canada's views are heard and considered by the incoming administration at the highest levels. And of course, I'm really looking forward to working closely with the new president and his team to create jobs and build back better for us all. Merci tout le monde.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Premier ministre. On va commencer la période de questions aujourd'hui par le téléphone. Opérateur, c'est à vous.
Thank you. Merci. Première question, Catherine Nevers, canadienne. À vous.
Oui, bonjour, Monsieur Trudeau. Vous venez de dire dans votre allocution là, que votre gouvernement pourrait imposer de nouvelles mesures là, aux voyageurs sans préavis. Je voulais savoir de quelles mesures est-ce qu'on parle exactement? Qu'est-ce que vos ministres ont en tête?
Comme j'ai dit, on est en train de regarder avec beaucoup d'attention la situation, particulièrement les mutations qu'on voit ici et là partout dans le monde, et on veut absolument tout faire pour protéger les Canadiens ici au pays. C'est pour ça que nous recommandons fortement que personne ne prenne des voyages non essentiels et que nous continuons à avoir parmi les mesures les plus strictes au monde par rapport à la quarantaine, par rapport à la dépistage avant le retour de voyage, pour s'assurer que les Canadiens continuent d'être protégés. Mais évidemment, on continue de regarder la situation et on va prendre d'autres décisions si nécessaire.
En sous-question, Catherine?
oui, j'essaie juste de comprendre, c'est quoi votre message aujourd'hui? Est-ce que c'est un avertissement? Est-ce que c'est une menace aux voyageurs? Et finalement, est-ce que vous êtes en train de leur dire, revenez à la maison, ça presse, parce qu'on pourrait imposer d'autres conditions sans préavis, finalement?
Je pense que ce que les gens ont vu quand on a amené des nouvelles mesures à Noël par rapport aux tests de dépistage avant de revenir au Canada, nous sommes toujours prêts à amener de nouvelles mesures. On reconnaît que la Constitution permet aux gens de voyager, mais en même temps, nous avons aussi l'obligation et le droit d'imposer des conditions extrêmement sévères et des pénalités extrêmement sévères pour ceux qui mettraient en danger les Canadiens. Alors, avec nos mesures de quarantaine, avec nos mesures de dépistage, avec les recommandations de ne pas voyager, on espère pouvoir continuer à protéger bien les Canadiens, mais si nécessaire, effectivement, on va amener d'autres mesures.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Operator, next question on the phone.
Thank you. Merci. Prochaine question. Émilie Bergeron, Agence QMI. À vous.
Oui, bonjour, M. Trudeau. En ouverture aussi, vous avez mentionné que vous voulez être certain que l'avis du Canada soit pris en considération par la future administration Biden quant à Keystone XL. Avez-vous déjà parlé à M. Biden de l'aider dans les prochaines heures, le dissuader de révoquer le permis d'expansion?
Comme vous savez, ça fait des années que j'appuie ce projet de Keystone XL. J'avais déjà fait cet argument il y a 7 ans d'ailleurs dans une salle pleine de démocrates à Washington avant que je devienne premier ministre. J'ai souligné ce projet directement avec le président Biden en démontrant que le Canada a beaucoup changé depuis qu'il était vice-président sous les années Harper par rapport à notre leadership en matière de lutte contre les changements climatiques. Nous sommes en communication avec l'administration au plus haut niveau pour ressouligner nos arguments en faveur de ce projet. Et j'ai confiance que nous allons être entendus, que nos arguments vont être considérés dans le processus. I have been very clear over the past 7 years that I support the Keystone XL project. I've made that case, including in front of a room filled with Democrats 7 years ago in Washington, D.C., before I became Prime Minister. We have highlighted, including in a direct conversation I had with President-elect Biden a number of weeks ago, that Canada has, in the intervening few years, become a global leader on the fight against climate change and moving forward on transforming our economy in positive ways to reduce carbon emissions, and that Keystone XL continues to be an important project for us. Over the past number of days and continuing today, we are communicating our arguments in favor of Keystone XL directly to the highest levels of this administration, and we will continue to work closely with them on this and many other initiatives to protect jobs and grow the economy in ways that also fight climate change.
En question, Émilie?
Oui, considérez-vous des moyens légaux comme au même titre que le premier ministre de l'Alberta, Jason Kenney, évoque? Est-ce que vous aussi, de votre côté, vous considérez ça? Mais je veux aussi vous entendre sur les livraisons de Pfizer. On entend que du côté de l'Union européenne, les délais, ça va les toucher seulement pour 1 semaine, alors que nous, au Canada, ça va nous toucher pendant 4 semaines. Qu'est-ce qui explique cette différence?
D'abord, je compte discuter avec le premier ministre Kenney plus tard aujourd'hui pour bien comprendre sa perspective et sa position. Par rapport à Pfizer, on a vu très clairement que nous allons pouvoir être assurés que le contrat est respecté, que nous allons recevoir toutes les doses promises dans le premier trimestre de 2021 et que nous allons continuer continuer d'être là pour vacciner le plus grand nombre de Canadiens le plus rapidement possible. Évidemment, avec cette nouvelle production de vaccins un peu partout dans le monde, on s'attendait à ce qu'il y ait des défis pour certaines compagnies. C'est pour ça qu'on s'est assuré d'avoir un plan qui a signé des contrats avec un grand nombre de compagnies de vaccins pour plus de doses par personne que n'importe quel autre pays. Et la ministre Anand continue à parler à tous les jours avec les représentants de Pfizer pour s'assurer que le Canada va continuer de recevoir les doses dont on a tant de besoin. We always knew that in manufacturing global vaccines at the scale that is going to be needed to end this pandemic, there were going to be challenges for certain companies in certain situations, which is one of the reasons why we took extra care to sign more contracts with more potential vaccine makers than most of our allies, and indeed have secured more doses per person than any other country because we knew there would be challenges. But even with the announced delays by Pfizer, we are confident we're remaining on track to receive all the promised doses we had signed for by the end of Q1, and indeed that all Canadians will be able to be vaccinated by September 2021.
Thank you. Operator, one last question on the phone.
Thank you. Merci. The next question is from Ryan Tumulty, National Post. Line open.
Yeah, good morning, sir. I wanted to ask you about the vaccine rollout, and specifically, I guess, it seems like the flaw in the strategy so far is the relatively few doses Canada is getting in Q1. I know it's set to scale up after that, but can you explain why Canada is getting so few doses in Q1? Was this all that was available? Were we not willing to meet prices that the drug manufacturers set? What was the challenge?
The challenge is, as of December 1st, 2020, there were none of these vaccines being produced anywhere in the world for general use. They were all in testing and trials, and the scientific community and scientists around the world and manufacturers did Herculean efforts in order to achieve an effective vaccine, actually many different effective vaccines against this pandemic in record time, while ensuring the safety and the efficiency of vaccines for people to use. This was a tremendous undertaking, and well before anyone knew which vaccines would be most effective, Canada made the decision to sign contracts with more potential vaccine makers than most of our allies, and actually secured more doses per capita for Canadians than any other country did for their citizens. Now, we recognize that standing up manufacturing processes take time, and that's why we've ensured to be part of the very first wave of vaccinations of any country around the world, and we continue to receive doses. The Pfizer manufacturing facility in Belgium is retooling to be able to produce even more vaccines for distributing to countries and people who need them, and that is causing a momentary delay in their production, but we have been assured by Pfizer that we will still be able to meet our commitments to Canadians as they will meet their contractual obligations to Canadians. Efforts will ramp up around the world as vaccine production increases around the world, but companies are ramping up production step by step, as is necessarily the case for a brand new series of vaccines.
Following up, Ryan?
Yeah, and sir, we're hearing reports out of Europe that the Pfizer doses are not being delayed for as long or not being reduced as significantly in several European countries as compared to Canada's orders. Can you explain that difference, why we're having a longer reduction and a deeper reduction?
I've understood that there are many different musings and reports and speculations and stories about this country doing this, about that country doing that. I had a lovely conversation with Angela Merkel yesterday morning in which she sort of complained to me that every day she gets it from the German media that they're not doing as well as Canada is. I think a lot of people are comparing comparing stories from country to country and trying to figure out how we can all move quicker. I can assure you that Minister Anand is talking almost daily with Pfizer and the other vaccine companies to ensure that we get as many doses as possible as quickly as possible, and that work will continue. We will not rest. We will not slow down until we get as many Canadians vaccinated as quickly as we possibly can so that we can all get through this pandemic. Okay. Je comprends que à travers le monde, les gens regardent ce qui se passe dans ce pays, dans un autre pays, pour essayer de comparer, pour voir si on est tous en train de faire les bonnes choses. Tout le monde est en train de travailler le plus fort possible pour assurer les doses le plus rapidement possible, le plus de doses possible. Et c'est ce que nous sommes en train de faire. J'ai eu une très belle conversation avec Angela Merkel, la chancelière de l'Allemagne, hier, mais elle a souligné que quasiment à chaque jour, elle se faisait critiquer par les journalistes allemands parce qu'elle n'avait pas fait aussi bien que le Canada. Et je lui ai assuré que ici, moi, je me fais interpeller à chaque jour pour dire pourquoi est-ce que nous, on n'a pas fait aussi bien que d'autres pays. C'est la situation dans laquelle on se trouve, mais je peux vous dire que nous sommes en train de travailler jour et nuit avec des appels constants avec les producteurs de vaccins pour s'assurer qu'on reçoit le plus de doses possible, le plus rapidement possible pour les Canadiens, parce qu'on veut tous passer à travers cette pandémie le plus rapidement possible.
Prime Minister Michael Couture with Global National. I just wanted to pick up on that. Those reports are suggesting that political pressure has worked. In fact, Israel's president is boasting that he's had 17 calls with the CEO of Pfizer. I know you said that Minister Anand is constantly in contact with them, but what are you doing, if anything, to try and put pressure on these companies to actually respect the contracts that we've signed?
The companies are respecting the contracts that we've signed. We will receive the doses that were committed by the end of Q1. We will have Canadians vaccinated, everyone who wants it, by September. These are the things that we've committed to Canadians, and we continue to work every day reaching out to the top levels of vaccine companies, including myself being involved, to ensure that we are getting the doses we need.
Hi, Prime Minister. Tom Parry, CBC. The World Health Organization has an interim report out today, or yesterday, about the global pandemic response. It talks about the WHO being slow to declare a pandemic and countries around the world being slow to respond. I know you've said there will be a time for Canada to look at the lessons learned from all this, but I'd like to get your response to this report. And also, do you think that Canada and other countries should have been better prepared for this pandemic?
We are, of course, looking very carefully at this interim report and seeing how we can apply those lessons, not just for future challenges, but right now to Canada's pandemic response. Obviously, there are things looking back that we could have, should have done differently. And I think one of the most important things as we move forward is making sure that we learn from this experience for future governments and future administrations. I can tell you that the experience of SARS in 2003 left Canada significantly better off and better prepared than many other countries for dealing with this pandemic. But even then, there were other things that we might have done that we didn't quite do in time, and that's why we're always going to be learning about how to better keep Canadians safe and how to better prepare for eventualities like this in the future.
Bonjour, M. Trudeau. Laurence Martin de Radio-Canada. Sur les voyages à l'étranger, on comprend que vous les déconseillez très, très fortement. Mais là, la semaine de relâche s'en vient. Est-ce qu'il faut interdire tous les voyages aux Canadiens, entre autres durant cette semaine de relâche?
On a une constitution qui garantit la liberté de se déplacer, de mouvement et de retour pour les Canadiens. Mais en même temps, je peux souligner que les mesures que nous avons mises en place ne sont pas juste pour décourager les voyagements, les 2 semaines de quarantaine obligatoire avec des conséquences très sévères, la nécessité de faire un test de dépistage avant d'embarquer pour l'avion du retour et d'autres mesures qu'on a mises en place. C'est pas juste pour décourager, c'est aussi des mesures qui vont assurer la protection des Canadiens. Mais nous sommes en conversation avec les premiers ministres des provinces et avec nos partenaires pour regarder comment et si on a besoin de prendre encore plus de mesures, y compris quand on parle de la semaine de relâche qui vient, quand on regarde l'éventualité des Canadiens qui passent l'hiver dans le sud, vont commencer à revenir au printemps. Nous allons regarder tout ce qu'on pourrait faire pour assurer la protection des Canadiens.
Morning, Prime Minister. Kevin Gallagher, CTV National News. Conservative leader Aaron O'Toole has said that he'd like to kick Derek Sloan out of the Conservative caucus. They're going to have to decide about that for Mr. Sloan accepting donations from Paul Frum, self-described white nationalist. But Mr. Frum's organization has also reportedly received money for the Canadian wage subsidy. So my broader question is, what can be done here for the government and for political organizations like the Liberal Party to avoid from infiltration of far-right groups that may be trying to get into the Canadian political sphere and use public money in some way as well?
I think, Kevin, you're combining a number of different things. First of all, political parties need to remain vigilant, particularly in the wake of what we've seen in the United States, from the infiltration or the active presence of fringe or extremist or violent or unacceptable or intolerant elements. And that's something that we constantly need to work towards as all politicians in Canada, which is incidentally why the Liberal Party has been calling for Aaron O'Toole to remove Derek Sloan from caucus for many, many months now, following a number of unacceptable comments that he has made. We are pleased that Aaron O'Toole has finally decided to take leadership, and we'll see how that unfolds. In regards to the wage subsidy, we knew we had to move quickly to support workers in jobs right across the country. And obviously, that meant sending help immediately to families and to individuals when this pandemic hit back in March, so that people could keep food on the table, could continue to pay their rent, regardless of the job or the organization they worked for. Obviously, that requires checking after the fact, and there is a lot of work ongoing with the Canada Revenue Agency and others to ensure that the companies that received and the workers that received these benefits actually needed them and actually qualified for them. And of course, anyone who is found to be breaking the law as a corporation or as an organization will face severe penalties.
Stephen Chase with the Globe and Mail. Good morning, Prime Minister. At least 3 publicly traded Canadian companies, Canadian resource companies, have active projects and plans in China's Xinjiang region, where a large number of Muslims are locked up in concentration and labor camps. These are Canadian Solar Incorporated, Dynasty Gold Corporation, and Gobi Min Incorporated. Can you assure Canadians that these companies are not using forced labor and are not contributing to human rights abuses of Chinese Muslim minority? And has the government taken any steps to speak to these companies?
We have been increasingly concerned over the past many years on the treatment of the Uyghur minority in Western China. We have highlighted that many times directly, both in global multilateral forums and directly with the Chinese government in meetings and conversations that I've had over the past years with their leadership. Over the past number of days, we've announced further measures around restrictions on benefiting from labor used in the region that may be forced labor by the Uyghurs. We are working with Canadian companies, all Canadian companies, to ensure that they are not benefiting from or profiting from these human rights abuses. We will continue to work very, very closely and follow up with the companies you named and all companies who have investments in that area to ensure that they are following Canadian values and Canadian law.
Hello, Prime Minister. Mike Blanchfield, Canadian Press. Can you give us a bit more detail You've told us what you've done on Keystone in the past. What do you plan to do tomorrow after Biden is inaugurated? I mean, are you going to call him directly? Are you going to try to persuade him to delay this action? Would you support legal action by the Alberta government if it comes to that? Can you give us some specifics about what's next on Keystone for you?
Like I've said, I've been very, very clear on my support for this project for the past 7 years. I have continued to work with American officials and members of various administrations on promoting and demonstrating the importance of this project from a jobs perspective, but also from an energy security perspective. I brought up this issue in my very first conversation with President-elect Biden before Christmas. Our officials in Washington have continued to make the case for Keystone XL. We understand, of course, that it is a commitment that the administration made many months ago, or the candidate, Joe Biden, made to cancel this pipeline. At the same time, we continue to demonstrate the leadership that Canada has shown on fighting climate change and on ensuring energy security as a priority for North America. We're going to continue to make that case, and I look forward to speaking with Biden, with President Biden, in the coming days to talk about this and many other issues that we will work on together as we build back better and as we fight COVID-19.
Merci beaucoup. C'est ce qui met fin à la conférence de presse d'aujourd'hui.
Merci tout le monde.